Woof.
Hello, howdy, and welcome to this World of Warships video with your host and a tater among taters. Yes, it's Tater Dawg. And I'm back today with a new video, and this is part 3 of a series that I started called A Tater's Thoughts, or you can also call it A Tater's Best, where I am looking at the best tech tree and premium ships at each tier from 5 to 10 in each of the ship classes. In the previous 2 videos, we've done battleships and we've done cruisers, but I saved my favorite for last, and that's the destroyers. That's the good old DDs, my favorite class. And so in this video, we're going to look at the best tech tree and premium DDs with honorable mentions at each tier from 5 to 10, with maybe a little bit of an honorable mention for some ships below tier 5. We'll see how that goes. But that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, there are some fun DDs at tier 2 and 3 where you've got a low amount of torpedoes per launch and a fast reload, and a lot of people do jousting competitions, especially with the tier 2 DDs. But really, for me, there's only one DD below tier 5 that you'll ever see me playing, pretty much, unless it's some kind of a special challenge, and that is going to be the tier 4 American tech tree ship, the Clemson. What a great ship. This boat, actually, what's interesting, although it cannot stealth torp because it only has a 5.5 kilometer torp range, it has the highest torpedo DPM at the tier, and it has torps on both sides of the boat. So if you're comfortable playing either while you're spotted or running ambush tactics or letting enemies come up close to you in your smoke, you can pull off some stuff with torps on this boat. But one of the other selling features at the tier is, even though you've only got 102 millimeter guns, you've got 8 of them. Now, you can only fire 6 to a side, but still, you've got a lot of guns. You've got a decent reload, especially if you build into the guns. You've got the second best DPM at the tier. Just really a good and fun boat to play that I would highly recommend. And you'll probably see a little bit of this as a theme as we start to go up the tiers. So that's pretty much it for anything below tier 5. So let's now bump up to tier 5, and we'll start off looking at the tech tree ships, and we'll go from that range. Now, the thing is, I don't have any tier 5 tech tree ships in my port currently, but based on the ships that I've played, which I've at some point sold off and really need to rebuy, the ship that I would pick probably as the best at the tier would be the tier 5 Japanese Minakaze, which is it's got 3 twin torp launchers on it, but it's just a really good stealthy torp boat. It outspots pretty much about everything at the tier, and just a great boat. Now, you're not going to get into or win any gunfights in the boat for sure. You may be able to gun down something that's on really low health, but that's about the extent of it. You don't have much in the way of guns on that boat. The other boat that would be an honorable mention at the tech tree would be the tier 5 American Nicholas. And again, the Nicholas is just an extension of the Clemson. This is where you get into the fast reloading American guns, so the DPM on this thing's really good. You've got decent torps on it as well, although they are short range. And again, you know, you're not able to stealth torp on American DDs until you get, I think, to tier 7. So, but still a great DD. That long American smoke, you can sit in the smoke and just blaze away with your guns. You can outgun just about any DD at the tier. So, good boat. Now, moving over to the premium side, I'm going to choose one boat to rule them all. And for me, it is the tier 5 Fujin. Now, you're going to say, why didn't you choose the Kamikaze? Well, it is a kamikaze. It's the exact same boat. The only difference is the camo that comes on it. And other than that, it's 100% identical. There are two reasons I am going to choose the Fujin over the kamikaze. And first one is the camo. I love this camo with the shark jaws in the front. I have affectionately named my own personal Fujin here Arsebiter, because that's basically what this ship does. It is a dev strike machine. If you are a battleship and you sail in a straight line when this thing is less than 7 kilometers from you, it's a good chance you're going to get dev struck. That's just the way it is. You've got 6 torps you can launch. You've got 3 twin launchers, and they reload very fast in around 40-ish seconds, depending on other factors. The other reason I choose this over the kamikaze is because of name recognition. And the reason I say that is, being a sneaky destroyer, which is what this is, it's a psychologically sneaky destroyer, in my opinion, because not as many players that have not been around as long know what a Fujin is, but almost everybody knows what a kamikaze is. So I think it gives you a little bit more of an element of your enemy potentially not knowing what you are and your capabilities. And also there is a tier 6 Pan-Asian DD that is named the Fushin. And I think sometimes people get that confused and may think that you're the Fushin and have deep water torps and can't harm them. So that's just my little psychological reason that I prefer the boat over kamikaze. They're both the same boat, and they're both overpowered. There's no doubt about it. You don't sleep on the guns on these boats either. I wouldn't want to be gunfighting like an American. There's several boats I wouldn't want to be gunfighting, but if you've got a big health advantage, go for it, because you can. You've got the hard hitting Japanese HE, and you can hurt DDs pretty bad. So don't sleep on the guns. Now that being said, if I go on the premium side over to the honorable mentions, I'm going to put the kamikaze in the honorable mention. It really should be a co-bestie with the Fujin, to be quite honest, because again, they have the same capabilities. They're the same boat. I just prefer the Fujin for the reasons mentioned. And here's the kamikaze. It just has a boring old camo, but that is what it is. The other boat that I'm going to put in the honorable mention is the Tier 5 American DD, the Hill. There's a couple reasons. Is number one, you've got 5 fairly fast reloading guns at this tier, so you've got the gun advantage over pretty much everything at Tier 5, and you've got that long American smoke. Again, you can't stealth torp in it. That's just the breaks with that, but this boat at the tier actually has some AA. It's not great, but you can protect yourself a little bit, especially from Tier 4 carriers. You can shoot down some planes. So just something to keep in mind. Good reason possibly to play the Hill. But those are my picks at the tier. There are some other fun boats, and a lot of people may wonder, why did you leave out the Grimiashi? I have a love-hate relationship with that boat, and that's why I left it out. The turret traverse is so glacially slow on it that it really thwarts how I want to play it. And I have not had good luck with it. Had I had better luck with it, it should be an overpowered ship pretty much, but I just haven't gotten the hang of it. So that's why these two boats are on the top of my list. Now, let's roll over to the Tech Tree side on Tier 6. Now, you can see I don't have but one boat in my line at Tier 6, but it's the boat that I'm going to pick at the tier, and that is the Fubuki. Great torps. It is a Japanese DD. You've got 9 10-kilometer torps that you can put in the water. You don't want to be gunfighting anybody in this thing. You've only got 4 guns. Again, they do hit pretty good, so if somebody's really low health, or if you're smoked up, go ahead and blaze away at the battleships. You've got a good fire chance on the guns. But a great torp boat at the tier, one of the best as far as the Tech Tree is concerned. The other boat and I'm going to continue, and you're going to see a pattern here. So you just saw it at last tier. My honorable mention, which I don't have in my port, would be the Farragut. Continuing on from the Hill and the Nicholas at tier 5, the Farragut, has great guns. Again, one of the best DPMs at the tier. Not a boat that you want to be getting into a gunfight with at tier 6 from a DD standpoint. So it's a great boat. Again, decent torps on it. You just can't stealth torp in it. So what can you say? But still a great boat. Now let's switch over to the premium ships. And at the tier 6 side, it was a little bit of a struggle, but the boat that I am going with for me as the best tier 6 premium DD is going to be the Japanese destroyer, the Shinonome. Now, interestingly, you've got 6 guns on this boat, and again, it's this hard-hitting Japanese HE. They do have a long reload, though, but you've got torpedoes similar to, it's kind of an extension of the Fujin and Kamikaze from the previous tier. You've got 9 torpedoes now instead of 3 double launchers. You've got 3 triple launchers. They reload fast. You're a good stealth torp boat. You're not the most stealthy at the tier, but you're average, about in there where most of the other DDs are. Highly recommended boat. I think it is typically available for completing one of the campaigns, if that's still available. So there may be other ways you can pick it up that I'm not aware of. But the other one that is going to get honorable mention at tier 6 premium is probably the one a lot of you thought was going to get picked as the best DD. And the reason I don't pick it as the best is because I'm inconsistent in it. I love the boat, but it's a love-hate relationship. And that's the German tier 6 T61. Good guns. You got that shorter German smoke, but good guns, good torps, fast reloading torps. They're fast torps as well. You only get 8 of them, but they hit medium hard, but still a great boat. And you have hydro, so you can pull some of those hydro and the smoke tricks and get some other DDs killed, or just hydro them on the other side of an island, or in somewhere where you get them killed, even if you don't kill them yourself. So really a great boat. I just don't quite play it to its potential, but still have fun in it and play it well and play it often. So definitely highly recommended. Now let's go on to tier 7. We are going to take a look at the Tech Tree ships. And my pick for the Tech Tree best ship, not the ship necessarily I like the most, but what I think is the best ship, in my opinion, is going to be the Pan-Asian destroyer, the Gajimata. Wonderful boat. You've got 6 guns. They're 620 millimeter guns. Realistically, I play this as a gunboat with decent torps rather than the other way around. It's got that Pan-Asian smoke, which is really good. It's fairly fast reloading, and it lasts a moderate time. So this is a great boat. Not a boat you want to get in too much of a gunfight with most of the time in most boats, but there are a couple of exceptions. And there are a lot of good Tech Tree DDs at tier 7. Actually, there's a lot of good DDs at tier 7 all the way around. There's not a whole lot of them that are really bad, but this is my favorite at the tier. Now, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be basically everything else is going to be an honorable mention at the tier. One of my favorite DDs at the tier is Shiratsuyu, and played as a torpedo reload booster boat rather than a smoke boat. You can really pump out the torpedoes with this thing when you do that, and it is a great boat. The sister ship to that, the Akatsuki, can also pump out the torpedoes, although it doesn't have a TRB. So you do have the TRB and smoke. You do have 6 guns on it, so you've got some decent guns, and they just have a long reload like most Japanese boats, but they do hit hard. But yet another decent boat that's worth your time. The Mahan is another boat that I really like. You can now stealth torp on the American DD line, and we already know the Mahan has great guns. Now you've got 5 guns with, I think, best reload at the tier. So this is probably one of the DDs at tier 7 you least want to get into a gunfight with if you can help it. But great guns, the American smoke, and now you can stealth torp. You have 9.2 kilometer torps, and although your concealment is not very good, if the concealment was great on this ship, it would just about be overpowered. But because the concealment's not that great, it's in the upper 6s, like 6.7, it tames it down a little bit. But still a great boat, and a boat that would not have made this honorable mention list a while back. I recently got a permanent camo for the Tier 7 Russian gunboat DD, the Minsk. And you've got 5 of these Russian 130s on this boat. And with it built for range, you've got a ridiculous range, and these Russian guns with the good arcs and the fast speed and all of that stuff. You can just really be a battleship's worst nightmare, or even a cruiser's worst nightmare, unless it's a Russian that has railguns. You can sit at range at like 12 kilometers and just pelt people with HE, and it's very hard for them to deal with you. And I have come to find that out and have really started to like this ship recently. Just started playing it when I got this this permanent camo, and it's a really nice looking permanent camo too. So that has to go on the honorable mention list as well. Now, switching over to the premium side at Tier 7. Again, there's some good DDs there. But for me, and this kind of goes along with some of the other ships I like, my top pick is the Udachi, or Udachi, whichever way you want to say that. You've got 5 guns on the Udachi. It's basically set up to be real similar to the Shiratsuyu, except you get both smoke and torpedo reload booster on it. Other than that, it's real similar to a Shiratsuyu. The gun reload, or DPM, is lower though, because you have a longer reload, but a great DD, and you have 15 kilometer range torps on this thing. So really great for just spamming your torps out there, and sometimes you'll get hits on stuff. You may try and torp something that's 7-8 kilometers away, but you might get a hit on something that's 12 or 13 kilometers away that you didn't even aim your torps at. So what a great boat. You know, the torps are a little slower, but they still are good. They're Japanese. They hit plenty hard. Great, great boat. Now, as far as other honorable mentions at the premium side, so for me, the first one is Z39, German DD premium here. You've got the 450 millimeter guns on this that can hit hard. They've got good AP. The HE has really good pin. You do have a longer reload, so your DPM is not the best on this ship. But a couple things you get here at Tier 7 that nobody else gets is you get the equipment slot on here to add a concealment to this, along with your captain concealment, which gets your concealment down to a around 6.1 or less kilometers at a tier when not much has a better concealment than that. So this can be, and you've got hydro. I should mention that, a fairly long range hydro. I discovered this ship quite some time ago when we had a ranked sprint season that was in Epicenter. And one thing I should mention is you've got the typical German torps that are fairly fast and they reload fast. They hit medium, but you can pump out a decent amount of torps in this thing. And what I found was on Epicenter, you could just basically go as fast as you could to get to the center cap and park there and dare anybody to come move you. And that ended up working for me better than playing Belfast. So that should tell you something about the power of a Tater in a Z39. Another honorable mention at the tier is going to be now the Commonwealth destroyer, the Howdy. This thing has an incredibly good DPM. You've got 620 millimeter guns on it. You can single launch your torps much like the British do, but you only get one rack of torps, so you've only got 4 torps. You're pretty fast, and you get creeping smoke, so you can either run fast and relocate and then slow back down to quarter speed and be back in your smoke, or you can creep around with your smoke and shoot at targets that way, however you want to do it. But a couple of the gimmicks in addition to the creeping smoke and the DPM that the Howdy has is you have a hydro. It is a little shorter range, so it's more like a British hydro. In my opinion, it's a little more defensive in nature than it is offensive. So keep that in mind. But that's makes this a dangerous boat. The second thing that I didn't mention is you've got the best concealment at the tier. I believe this thing goes down to 5.7, something like that. So I believe that's the best concealment at the tier. You can pretty much outspot everything. That's why it's sometimes a popular pick if there's a tier 7 clan battle season. Now, some people might be asking, why didn't you choose the Leningrad as a top pick or a as an honorable mention? Well, honestly, I probably haven't played it enough, but I haven't had a real love for the ship. It hasn't given me, even though it's a powerful ship, hasn't given me anything that's made me just really, really want to play it. Now, if I get into a period where I'm playing more Russian gunboats, that may change, but right now, those are my top picks at this tier, and the Leningrad is just barely on the outside looking in. Let's roll up to tier 8 now, and we're going to go back to the Tech Tree ships, and we're really getting a lot of DDs on the list now. There's a lot going on at the tier. So let's start with the Tech Tree best picks, and for me, there's one pick as the best boat. It is the DD I play the best at the tier, in my opinion, and it is it to me is a very powerful and versatile boat, and that is the American DD, the Benson. Now, this is where the American DDs really started to click for me. I blew through the Benson grind in about 12 or 13 games because I won most everything in it for some reason, and everything just worked. I was able to land torps consistently, even though they're slower and moderate range. I believe it's 9.2. I was able to do well with torps on the boat, and we already know about the guns. We've got 5 fast reloading American guns, very dangerous in a gunfight. Not a whole lot of other boats, other than something like maybe the Lightning or some others, can stand up to it, or maybe Akizuki, but just a great, incredible all-around DD that can do it all. Probably shades a little bit more to being more useful as a gunboat, a little bit, but again, great boat. The other boat at the Tech Tree side that will get an honorable mention and could, depending on a person's play style, I can see a lot of people having this as the best ship at the tier. I'm going to give it an honorable mention, and I do play it well when I've played it. That's the tier 8 Akizuki. You've got these 800 millimeter high velocity, extra pin added Japanese guns on this thing, and it is just a DPM monster. It is a fire starter. You have the option of going IFHE for extra pin if you want, even though you don't have to have it. But you have a torpedo reload booster and 1 rack of torpedoes that are 10-kilometer torps, and they're Japanese, so they hit hard. You've got the smoke. Just a great ship. Not necessarily the best cap contester, but it depends on how you build it. But if you build this thing as a gunboat and you have some support to help spot for you, you can just melt stuff with this thing. So highly recommend this boat at the Tech Tree. Now, there are some other good boats out there on the Tech Tree. I mean, a lot of the boats, the Kiev, the Kagero, Z23, Lightning, Fantastic, Sinyang, Oland. Nothing wrong with any of those boats. These are just my picks as the best at the tier for a tater like myself. Now, let's roll over to the premium side of things and see what we got here. Now, on the premium side, for me, best boat for me at the tier is the British boat, the Cossack. You've actually got 8 guns on this thing, 820 millimeter guns with an incredible DPM. They hit hard. Now, you have the typical short British smoke, but they're great because you can smoke up, fire for a little bit, and get the heck out of Dodge and reposition before you get torped in your smoke. You know, you can use it to get unspotted, unspotted by airplanes or other boats. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. It's actually fairly fast, and it has a speed boost, which most boats don't get. Now, you are limited by only having 1 rack of torps, but they're decent torps. You get 4 torpedoes, and you can single fire them because it's British. But just an absolute great boat that I play well in and enjoy playing. Now, on the premium side for honorable mention, now there's, again, a lot of good boats at the tier here, but the 2 boats I'm going to give honorable mention to, one is the tier 8 gunboat, the Kid. So basically the Kid is a Benson that has a heel, but you sacrifice a rack of torps to get that heel. So it's also pretty fast. You got the Great American Smoke, but you know, you just got that 1 rack of torps. So really great. You have to play it mostly as a gunboat, and the torps are just kind of a, you know, hope you get something out of it kind of thing. But a great thing, great boat. The other gimmick that you get is you also get a decent anti-aircraft suite on this thing. So a lot of carriers don't want to mess with you too much until they have to. You also get defensive AA on this boat. So you can do a lot of damage to a carrier's planes. You can shoot down a ton of planes with this thing. So another good gimmick that this has. So highly recommended as a premium. The other premium that is really highly recommended is the Pan Asian Tier 8 Low Yang. Now, so basically, the Low Yang is a Benson that's missing a turret. You only get 4 guns. You got the same guns, the same reload, but you lose 20% of your DPM because you've lost a turret. But what you gain is a very long-range hydro, and you can really do some stuff with this. You can do some work. If you can ever catch somebody in their smoke and sneak up to them, it's just pretty much, even with the loss of DPM, it's mostly all over for them. Or if somebody's trying to charge you in your smoke, you know, if you can keep that between them and keep them hydroed, you know, it's a great thing. Good boat. The torps are not bad. If I'm not the best at playing the hydro boats like the German lines and that such, where you have the more offensive hydro, and so I've struggled in the past with the Low Yang, but I do play it better now than I used to. But still a great boat, a lot of fun. There's a lot of other good boats at the tier. You know, the Asaccio is a little more niche, but it can be very dangerous. You've got the La Terrible. So there's boats out there that are good. These are just my picks for the tier. So now we're moving on to tier 9, and we're going to the Tech Tree boats, and let's take a look to see what the recommendation is here. So for me, sticking with kind of the same principles I've stuck with most of this thing for my main ship, or my best choice and or honorable mentions. For me, best ship at the tier on the Tech Tree side is going to be the American DD, the Fletcher. You've got this is a Benson, again, a Benson with better torps. So you're really getting to the transition now where the American DD line is starting to transition almost a little. Still, it's a all-arounder, but in Mahan, it's a gunboat, a really good gunboat with good torps. Then in Benson, it's a really good gunboat with pretty good torps. And now you've got a really good gunboat with really good torps. Although there are some other good gunboats at the tier 2, but you've got better torps, so you're starting to transition to that point in the American line where you're maybe just a little better of a gunboat or a torp boat than you are a gunboat. It's kind of borderline here, but because of that all-around nature, absolutely wonderful ship. Now, as far as the honorable mentions, there are a couple of honorable mentions for me. The first would be, much like we had in another tier, the Kitakaze, which is just the next progression from the Akizuki. Now you've got 8 guns still, but I think you get an extra torp in your rack of torps, and you may get a little better reload, I think, if I remember that right. You might get just a tad more DPM, but all in all, still a monster of a ship. You still got good concealment if you choose to build into it, or you can just build it straight as a gunboat. Just however you like to build it, it can play multiple ways, but it is probably the boat that most DDs least like running into. Very nasty boat. You still got those 100 millimeter Japanese guns with the bonus HE pin on them, so you can choose to build into IFHE or not. It really works either way. So the only other ship at the Tech Tree that I would give an honorable mention to is the Tier 9 Chungmu. Now, again, basically, you got 5 guns on here. This is more or less a Fletcher. It might have just a little slower reload, I believe, so the DPM's not quite as good as a Fletcher, but in return for that, you get deep water torps. And so, and you got that Pan-Asian smoke, which is a little different from the American. It has some advantages and disadvantages. It doesn't last as long, but it reloads faster, and it does last a pretty good while. So this thing will play decently as a gunboat, but it's got great torps. And it's a boat that I enjoyed playing whenever I ground up the Pan-Asian line. Again, plenty of other good boats at the tier. There's nothing wrong with the Yagumo, the Z46, the Jutland, the Tashkent even, and the Mogador, and the Ostergo. There's nothing at all wrong with any of those. I'm just giving you my picks for the best ones at the tier. Now, Tier 9 premiums. Well, there shouldn't be any big surprise where I would go with that based on previous picks. We're going with the Benham. This thing is a torpedo factory. That's the only thing you can say about it. It has 2 quadruple launchers on each side, and it reloads really fast. So your basic strategies for this thing is, or at least for me, is I charge a cap and you wiggle torp to one side, wiggle torp to the other side towards where your RPF indicator is at. And then in other situations, you just kind of try and parallel or kite away from the enemies, and you just torp from one side and wiggle and torp from the other side. So it's just a wiggle torp fest. And you can just keep a lot of torps in the water constantly. So the old rules, if you throw enough crap at the wall, some of it's going to stick, and that's the case here. Really good and really fun DD to play. It only has 4 guns, so your DPM isn't what you have with other DDs at the tier, but it can kind of fend for itself. I wouldn't gunfight a lot of the other DDs at the tier, or purposefully pick gunfights, but when you have to, you can use the guns and they'll be okay for you. Now, as far as an honorable mention, there's one boat here that I'm going to give an honorable mention, and it is the only boat in the series that I'm going to give an honorable mention to that I do not own and have never owned, but it is the one boat that I do want to own, and that is the Tier 9 American DD, the Black. The Black is a really interesting boat because basically you get a Fletcher that has the same smoke, the same guns, and it has radar. Now, the drawback is for the torps, you get really, really slow torps, and by slow I mean like sea mines. I think they go something like 43 or 44 knots maybe. You have fast DDs that can actually outrun the torps. So just to give you an idea, I have seen videos showing a French DD running by black torps, but woe be unto you if one of them happens to hit you, or if you happen to run into one, because they hit like an absolute truck. But this ship is really powerful. The Black was originally, I think it was originally available for steel maybe, and it has been removed, but it's supposed to be coming back at some time. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to it coming back because I would like to get it. It is high on my list of ships to get my hands on. So outside of that, there's some other decent ships at the tier, but just these two for me are it for the Tier 9 premiums. So now we can move over to the Tier 10 Tech Tree ships, and boy, there are a bunch of good ones here at Tier 10. Some of them have they're a little more niche in what they can do, but there are great ships at the tier. I'm going to have co-besties at the tier, and as you've seen through this list, I have a huge love for sneaky torp boats, and it's going to come out in these choices. So the two co-besties that I'm going to choose, the first one is going to be the Tier 10 USDD, the gearing. Great guns, but now even better torps. Now you've got fairly fast loading, fairly fast traveling, 16.5-kilometer torps. I cannot tell you how many ships I've launched torps at, and either a few hit or maybe I missed, but I hit something else that was much further away. I hit something else that was 12, 14, 15 kilometers away that I didn't even aim the torps at. And now that we don't have team damage mechanics in place, doesn't really matter if it's a teammate anymore. But I still try and make sure that I'm launching it towards the enemy. That would be desirable. But just a great ship. It does have, because it's a little bit wider for a DD, it does have this nasty habit of arming AP shells and eating pins. So you can get hurt bad by battleships sometimes, particularly if they're accurate. So the other co-bestie at this tier shouldn't come as a surprise. It's the Japanese DD, the Shimakaze. You can put 15 torpedoes in the water. I exclusively play the 12-kilometer torps, but you have options for 20-kilometer torps, which have a much bigger detection range, so they give more reaction time, but they stay in the water for a long time. You also have options for an 8-kilometer torp. The Shima has the best stealth at the tier, and it's still, as old as this ship is, it is still a pick many times for clan battles even. So a great boat. With the torps, you can really do a lot of damage. You can rack up spotting damage. It's a good cap contester. Just a great all-around ship that has, even with power creep, it's still a solid boat. Now, moving over to the honorable mentions. Again, everything at the tier is fairly decent, some at a certain thing, but the boats that I would give an honorable mention to, first one would be the British DD, the Daring. Super fast firing, high DPM. You got 620 millimeter guns. It's a great DD hunter. Its biggest draw, and it has defensive, what I call defensive hydro, the short British smoke. It can be a guerrilla fighter, smoke up, rain some HE, set some stuff on fire, then relocate because the smoke doesn't last long, and do it again. You can really just annihilate other DDs, especially the ones that don't have as good a DPM. You do have a hill as well. So this ship's got a really good toolbox to deal with a lot of stuff. Now, your torps aren't overly great. They're 10 kilometer and the reload's pretty long on them, but they still hit decently hard enough that you don't want to discount them. But this ship is really better of a gunboat in my opinion, but still would classify more in the all-around stage, but is on the better of gunboat side. So that's one. The other one that would obviously give honorable mention is it's one of the ones that has broken clan battles before, and that's the Kleber. This ship absolutely just blisters through the water. It's got good gun range. The AP hits hard. The HE hits hard. It does have 139 millimeter guns, so pretty good caliber. You can't quite stealth torp in it anymore, or if you can, it's just almost equal, the stealth and torp. So it can work well for hunting other DDs since it has the gun reload boost. So a lot of things going for it. You can stay at range and pelt ships with HE and watch them try and land shells on you when you're doing 50 knots from 12 kilometers away. Really difficult if somebody has arky shells on their boats. So all in all, a great boat. You can relocate really quickly to where you're needed on the map. Can't say enough good about it. Now, having said that, again, there's other good boats. I mean, the Haragumo, crazy good gunboat. You've got the new Delny. The jury's out on that. You've got Elbing, which is a good support boat with great AP. Grozovoy is a good all-around boat and gunboat. Z52 is power crept really bad, not horrible, but a lot of good boats. Yang, Howland. You've got all kinds of good boats there, but these are my picks on the Tech Tree side, is just the Gearing, the Shima, the Daring, and the Kleber. So now we're going to go over to the last category, the Tier 10 Premiums. Oh, excuse me, they're still special ships. There are no Tier 10 Premiums, just Tier 10 special ships. So looking at those, this was kind of a hard decision for me, but realistically, the boat that I chose as the pick at the tier for the best is the Marceau. So basically the Marceau is a Kleber, but it has stupidly fast firing, and it has 8 of them, and they're basically American guns. So they're the 127 millimeters. They've got a little bit of a floaty of an arc, but this boat has the best DPM to my knowledge, HE in the game at tier 10 DDs comparatively. So it is super disruptive. If you're good with your WASD hacks, it's hard to land a lot of shells on. It's French, so it's got that damage saturation characteristic that makes it hard to kill. The torps are usable. They're not great, but they're definitely usable. But this thing is just so disruptive is the best term I can use for it. That had to be my number one pick. And outside of that, for honorable mentions, there's 2 boats there. The first one for me is going to be the Commonwealth, the Ragnar. So this is kind of like the other Commonwealth boats, but it has 152 millimeter fast reloading guns. You got, like the way I've set this up, it's got a 2.8 second reload. The AP is punishing, the HE is punishing. You can play this thing like a kiting cruiser. You do not have torps or anything like that. You do have the super speed boost that's shorter duration, but gives you like a 30% speed boost, if I'm not mistaken. It does have radar, and you can hurt DDs really bad with this thing. So it's with these big guns and fast reloads. So a lot of things you can do with it. Pretty versatile. It's a little bit like what the Groningen, but in my opinion, way better. So that would be a good honorable mention, as well as a boat that does similar things, which is the Småland. Now the Småland is like a Howland with 2 less torps and better DPM, if that is it could be a thing, but yeah, that's correct. Better DPM. So it is a good DD hunter. It is a good kiting HE spammer, and you can torp with it as well. You can do a little bit of cap contesting as well. It's a really good boat. I am not the best at playing radar DDs, but it's just a great boat, and I would recommend that highly on list of tier 10 premiums to get. So that's it. That is it for the list, and appreciate the attention and checking out the video. Hope everybody has had a great day, and hope you'll have a good time coming up. Hope everybody will stay safe and stay well and stay happy. Have a good one. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to see notifications of future videos, just ring the bell. Until next time, Tater Dawg says, woof.